Howdy chemists! We made it to the end of week 5 of our Intro to Organic Chemistry class. So we are halfway through, another 5 weeks to go. We can do it. It's looking good. I had a fun week. I enjoyed lots of conversations centering around ketones, for example. So you get a ketone body, you get a ketone body. Everybody gets a ketone body. Really, we all get ketone bodies so that we can survive the night without that extra glucose supply from eating. So let's talk about highlights from our week. So many of you will be receiving extra credit on this Unit 2 test through the Remind feature that was described about in the last week summary, so week 4 summary video. So congratulations to all those of you. I really did enjoy those messages. And then the Unit 2 test was a big highlight from the week, maybe a low light for you, depending on how you're looking at it. That test opened up yesterday and will stay open until Tuesday. So I'm keeping it open as we're moving into our next week, but I'd really encourage you to make sure that you don't get behind in our Unit 3 material by kind of hanging out in the Unit 2 material for too long. So just be aware. But really, the highlight of the whole week was actually me getting my new bicycle, which I've named Bella, and rode around the neighborhood a lot. If you live in the Peninsula area, you might see me out there, happy as a clam and smiling so hard I get little bugs in my teeth. It's been awesome and definitely an uplifting experience. I would really encourage you to try to prioritize getting outside at least 30 minutes a day for the sunlight, for the exercise, and just for the lifting of the spirits that it can do during this time. So our learning outcome. So we were working hard in chapter, I think 13 this week. Yep, that sounds right. Learning about some organic families that have this general structure. So they have this functional group known as a carbonyl group or a carbonyl carbon. Carbonyl carbon is a carbon that's double bound to an oxygen. So our aldehyde or ketones are really distinguished based on, sorry, let me find my cursor, based on this like R prime, like this, what one of those R groups. If even one of those R groups is a hydrogen, it's an aldehyde. A ketone is always in the middle, so it's always going to have a carbon group on either side. So that's the primary difference between the two organic families that we were looking at this week. And you got to explore those a little bit in your discussion. So we discussed aldehydes and ketones that we're familiar with. As someone whose undergraduate degree is in biology, formaldehyde is the first thing that comes to mind. But if you've ever used nail polish remover or needed acetone for any other reason, you're familiar with the simplest ketone, whose common name is acetone. Other ones that you might be familiar with, benzaldehyde. Benzaldehyde is really like the kind of prime ingredient in almonds that give them their flavor, are really responsible for a lot of the flavor of almonds. And then a lot of you referenced the keto diet. And a keto diet, you know, as the mother of a diabetic, ketones or ketone bodies is a big thing that I think of when I hear the word ketone. And we got into that also with the Kussmaul breathing. So that relates both to the ketone diet and the scenario involving the little boy with the undiagnosed type 1 diabetes. And so remember, ketone bodies refers to those 3 really specific molecules. Whether or not they are actual ketones, they're still referred to ketone bodies because of the interrelationship between them. And they serve an incredibly important role in the body of helping our energy supply during times of low glucose supply, whether that's from fasting, a flu, or in the case of the little boy, undiagnosed type 1 diabetes and the insufficient insulin supply that was then resulting in his cells not getting glucose. And so the burning of fat, the conversion of the acetyl-CoA into ketone bodies by the liver, which can then cross the blood-brain barrier, etc. So I wanted to share with you guys, since I am the mother of a diabetic, I wanted to show you, here's our little sample of, these are ketone urine test strips. So if we're in a situation where we're a little concerned our daughter might have ketones, we might use these that are hiding constantly with my background. We also actually have a one for testing it through the blood. This is called a ketometer, and it works just like a glucometer does in terms of testing blood sugar. So we prick our daughter's finger, get a little blood, and test it with this using specialized strips. And this is a nice one for if you're dealing with maybe a young child who isn't willing to like urinate on command, or maybe a child who's sleeping. So ketones in their natural role are a really good thing and part of the homeostatic balance of our body for the energy supply. It's those unique situations in which they get out of control that's a problem and can lead to conditions like DKA because of the acidic nature of several of them. And that's what we explored then with our discussion question. Our third discussion question was about if you mixed up a bottle of propanol and propanone, what could you do to distinguish them? And probably the simplest thing is going to involve some type of test with an oxidizing agent, either like the Benedict's test or using Benedict's solution, or the Tollens test, because both of those, the Tollens reagent and Benedict's reagent, are oxidizing agents that will react with the aldehyde and not the ketone. And it's going to be a very visible reaction. You don't have to think about like zooming into the Miss Frizzle level to see that it happens. When you get a positive reaction with the Benedict solution, the blue color fades and a red precipitate will form in the test tube. With the Tollens reagent, literal silver metal will be seen in the test tube as the silver then gains those electrons and becomes pure elemental silver. So you'd be able to visually see that. And the difference in the ability to oxidize an aldehyde versus a ketone is really the main reason that they end up getting two different organic family names, even though they are so structurally similar. So where are we going next? What's next? Well, we're going to be entering in week 6, so we're going to be on that like kind of downward 5 weeks of the quarter. This meme cracks me up. I am embarrassed actually about how much I giggled even just putting it into the PowerPoint, so hopefully this will make a little bit more sense. So this week we learned about carbonyl, the functional group, with carbonyl. I can't think of what I'm trying to say here. Bear with me. We learned about organic families that have a carbonyl carbon, a carbon double bonded to an oxygen. We're going to extend that and we're going to learn about organic families, one more organic family that also has a carbonyl, and that's our carboxylic acids. And then we'll learn about carboxylic acid derivatives and ester formation, and then also ester hydrolysis and the making of soap. Now, as you're thinking about these final 5 weeks of our quarter and planning, I do want to notify you about some changes from our original syllabus, which I kind of told you in the beginning had to be a little bit fictional. So it's about timing. So the major change is that Unit 3 will be covered in week 6 and 7 of the course, so our next 2 weeks, just like our Unit 2 was covered in these last 2 weeks. And then Unit 4 will span that final remaining time. So just to be thinking about as you're planning out your last bit. So in terms of what do you need to do, what's next for you? Complete anything that's left. If you have stuff left on your discussion or you need to work on your lab, get that done. Make sure to take the Unit 2 test. It does close Tuesday, as we talked about earlier. Make your initial, that first post. Remember, you don't have to know, just gets you thinking. It triggers your brain to be paying attention to that kind of content as you go into the quarter, and it's a learning strategy that's good for your brain. And then begin working on your week's to-do list, week 6, learning outcomes and to-do list. So I want to talk to you about a little Easter egg. So when I tell you like, hey, there's an opportunity for extra credit or something, that's within a video. Sometimes we call that an Easter egg, so like a little hidden special thing. So for this upcoming week, I put a literal picture, it's not a literal Easter egg, but a picture of an Easter egg in your learning outcomes video. And if you click on that, you can't tell by looking at it, but if you click on it, it's actually a link and it's going to take you somewhere. And there is going to be a question on this week's quiz about where it takes you and what you see there. So if you'd like to receive some extra credit in this class, which can make up for some lost ed puzzle videos or maybe some discussion points that you lost along the way, which is why I like to do the extra credit, you're going to want to click on that Easter egg in your week 6 learning outcome and to-do list. So I hope you guys have a great week and get out there in the sun.